Evening, folks. Welcome to the School Board Candidates Night presented by the Noblesville Chamber of Commerce in partnership with the League of Women Voters. My name is Bob Dubois, President of the Noblesville Chamber. I want to thank our candidates for being here, thank our moderator for being here, but most importantly, thank you all for being here tonight to hear our candidates. This is an important race. These are important leadership positions for our community. Tonight will be televised, courtesy of Hamilton County Television. It'll go live tonight as you speak, but it'll also be rebroadcast throughout the month of October. So we ask that you speak clearly into the microphone as they are voice activated. We have candidates cards for questions for the audience. If you would like to ask a question, please fill out the cards. You can turn them in to any one of our volunteers, and they will organize those cards and turn them in to our moderator to be asked at the end of our program. At the end of the program, we'll also hear from the League of Women Voters about some of the upcoming other candidates forums that are happening in Hamilton County. We're thankful to have our moderator, Jerry Barr, Judge Jerry Barr. He's a Noblesville native. He's a product of our local educational system, but then he went on to Yale University and the University of Chicago School of Law and served 24 years as a Superior Court judge and now continues to serve as a senior judge throughout Indiana, uncovering vacancies as they occur throughout the Hoosier state. Former chairman of the Noblesville Chamber Board of Directors and a current member of our Business Advocacy Committee, and we couldn't think of a more appropriate person to handle tonight's duties. So I'm going to turn it over to Judge Jerry Barr to moderate this evening, and we just thank you for your willingness to come forward to serve the public, and good luck tonight. Thank you. It's yours.
Thank you, Bob. And thank you again, candidates, and for your willingness to put yourselves out here on the line and your willingness to serve as a member of the Board of School Trustees serving Noblesville schools. First of all, as all of you know, two positions are up for election. Each of you are seeking one of those positions. There are three other positions on the Board of Trustees, school trustees. Those three are up in 2 years in 2020. So we are seeking a term that will serve 4 years in its service. And we appreciate your willingness to, again, to put yourself on the ballot and to seek the support of those people that are present here as well as those watching tonight. Now, we have before us, let's see, we have Dr. Bill. Here to my left, we have Mr. Jeff Bragg, we have Mrs. and Reverend Terry Disler, and we have Mr. Duell, Mr. Michael Duell, Mr. Brian Durham, we have Dr. Joe Forgey, and we have Mr. Dave Lyda. Those are the 7 candidates for each of you, and I know that you have some of your supporters here, hopefully, and also there are many people here who are watching, who are wanting to know a little bit more about your positions and to help them be more informed when they go to the polls. Now, the first act will be give each of you an opportunity to make a 2-minute opening, and I believe that there's been a drawing here so that the order has been selected by random. Thereafter, I'm going to pose 5 questions to you, and of course to each of you. You'll receive the same question. We'll start the first question with Dr. Bill, and then the second question will start with Mr. Bragg, and so on down the list, and then of course the others will catch up and finish in the order in which they appear. This will give everybody a chance to have their first response, or if that's considered a negative, the opportunity to not listen to what everybody else has to say. Then, and those responses are limited to 1 minute each. Then at the end, each of you will have an opportunity to do a close. That will be for 1 1/2 minutes. And basically that will be in the opposite order in which you started the evening with your opening. So I think at this time we're ready to proceed, and we'll start first with Dr. Bill. And Dr. Bill, you may proceed with your opening, which is limited to 2 minutes. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Judge. I'm an educator. I bring 50 years problem-solving experience in leadership, management, research science, and facilities and grants and budget planning and teaching roles within business, industry, government, and in both public education and higher education. I am a former CEO of a complex four-county community mental health center, chief administrator of what was the second largest Indiana County Health Department, and department head for clinic administration at the James Whitcomb Riley Hospital for Children, serving more than 250,000 patients annually. Warren Bennett once wrote that leaders do what is right and managers do it the right way. I am humbled by the appointments and trust I have enjoyed by university presidents, governors, boards and staff of community mental health and public health organizations, and state commissioners. At Indiana University School of Medicine, Department of Medical and Molecular Genetics, I served a faculty appointment to conduct the largest NIH co-sponsored clinical research study of its kind in the United States regarding genetic bioage factors related to the onset of Huntington's disease among 700 at-risk adults. I bring insight and perspective to the Noblesville School Board regarding safety and behavioral issues, in part from my background as a behavioral clinician at the State Department of Correction, Logansport Juvenile Intake and Diagnostic Center, and as the Grants Development Specialist appointed directly by the State Correction Commissioner. I served as a substitute teacher in K through 12, and 7 years as a vocational rehabilitation counselor, and was one of 13 visually impaired specialists. I believe the mission of public schools is to help students learn how to learn, since learning is a lifelong process.
Thank you, Dr. Bill. Our second opening will be Mr. Durham, Mr. Brian Durham. And Mr. Durham, you may proceed.
Hey, my name's Brian Durham. I'm a Noblesville parent, a very active Noblesville parent of 3 wonderful children. What brings me to want to serve on the board is a passion. It's not a background in education. I'm an analyst by nature, so I have the experience in analyzing problems and different levels, but it's really a passion to serve the youth of this community and the teachers in this community, because we have a very strong school district and a very strong community. But if we don't continue to serve those individuals at the highest level possible, then we will not be able to continue that. So that's really what I'm here for, and would like to be able to.
Thank you, Mr. Durham. Our next opening will be by Mr. Duell, Mr. Michael Duell. You may proceed.
Well, thank you to the Noblesville Chamber of Commerce. My thanks to the League of Women Voters. Thank you, Judge Barr. And thank you all for investing your time to be with us this evening, including those at home watching. My name is Michael Duell, and I'm a father of 3 and the co-founder of SOS Noblesville, and I'm running for Noblesville School Board. SOS Noblesville was created by concerned parents following the Parkland massacre in February 14. And it especially hit home with me personally 6 days later when another fatal school shooting took place, this time at Jackson Memorial Middle School in Northeast Ohio, a school that I attended as a child. During the March 20 school board meeting, SOS Noblesville presented a comprehensive proposal supported by 1,700 people for an Indiana-tested and proven security system adopted by both Southwestern High School in Shelbyville, Indiana, and Pike County Schools, meeting every single requirement by the Indiana Department of Homeland Security and signed into law by then-Governor Mike Pence. That same night, 2 months prior to the shooting in May 20th, I expressed concerns about public safety, school safety, saying, among other things, that while none of us wish for a school shooting to ever happen anywhere to anyone, we can no longer afford to naively believe it would never happen here. School violence is the defining issue of our time. We must ignore the propaganda, the agenda-driven naysayers, misinformation, and focus on what we see if we are to do what is necessary. We are accountable for what we do or don't do to reasonably safeguard our students, staff, and faculty. This should really matter to you, And I know that it does, or he wouldn't be here this evening or watching on TV. It matters to me, and that is why I am running for the school board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Duell. Our next opening is by Mr. Lyda, Mr. Dave Lyda, and you may proceed.
Good evening. Thank you for attending. My name is David Lyda, and I'm a candidate for Noblesville School Board. My family has lived in Noblesville for 20 years. My wife, Angie, and I have 3 boys. Matthew, a graduate of Noblesville High School, Nathan, a senior, and Ben, an 8th grader at West. From the moment we moved here, I have volunteered within our community, from coaching baseball, football, basketball, to volunteering as a chaperone for school field trips, to leading Noblesville Youth Baseball as president. I have invested in our community. I believe in Noblesville, and I want to continue to serve. I believe that we must educate our children to be our future workers, our future business owners, and our future community leaders. Education is paramount, and it starts in kindergarten. I have 3 main themes of my platform: safety and security, technology, and fiscal responsibility. We must invest in safety and security of our students and assure a safe learning environment. My youngest son was in Mr. Seaman's class on May 25th, so I have a perspective that other parents do not share. To me, safety and security are more than just buzzwords. They're an absolute necessity. Technology is woven into our kids' daily lives. From the moment they wake up and until they go to bed, they are using technology. The school must continue to leverage it in a responsible way and ensure it's a viable learning aid, not a replacement for teaching. As a Microsoft employee, I'm well positioned to help provide guidance around technology implementation, adoption in a responsible and safe manner. Lastly, fiscal responsibility. That's a hot topic right now. We have to be fiscally responsive. We have to be good stewards of taxpayer money. And I want to assure that we're looking at every opportunity for reducing unnecessary expenses and finding ideas for creative funding as well. We did that at NYB. We served over 1,200 kids. We served them well, and we grew, and we were fiscally responsible. I have a lot of experience in that area to offer, and I'm willing to do so. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present.
Thank you, Mr. Lyda. Our next opening will be by Dr. Joe Forgey. And Dr. Forgey, you may proceed.
I'd like to thank Bob and the Chamber of Commerce and the League of Women Voters for putting this together tonight, and Judge Barr for keeping us in line up here. I'm Joe Forgey, and I think I'd be a good fit to be a member of the Noblesville School Board, and my life's experiences are going to make that good fit. I've been in and out of Noblesville schools for years, with 5 adult children having attended school here, and I currently have 3 grandchildren. I don't need more children. 3 grandchildren in the schools. I've given hundreds of lectures at the elementary level, the middle school level, and the high school level in the healthcare classes on dental education. I've also spent a lot of time in dunk tanks at the elementary school fundraisers. In the area of management, I've owned a business here in Noblesville for over 40 years. I understand budgeting, making payroll, maintaining a good staff, managing operations, maintaining buildings and grounds. I understand the business side of it. I was also a member of last year's Miller Ambassadors class put on by the superintendent and her staff, which was an excellent program for anybody that might be running for school board or anybody that just wants to know more about Noblesville School. Excellent program that they put on. But probably my best experience was sitting across the kitchen table from my late wife, Cynthia. Smart lady, and she served on the Noblesville School Board for 8 years in the early 2000s. And as she'd bounce things back and forth, she always came back to what was the best thing for the children. Now, I also have concerns about school safety. If we pass the referendum, which I'm in favor of, it's going to provide us more resources to deal with that. I think we have to look at best practices, and then I think we have to go through the school board, the administration, the local and state safety programs to try to figure out how best to use that. Next thing, teacher compensation. Teachers in Noblesville are now paid about $10,000 less than they are in the neighboring schools, and it's easy to drive your car 10 minutes more down the road to make $10,000 at another school. We can't continue to lose good teachers. And I'd like to wrap it up by saying I've been an advocate for 40 years for children. I'd like to continue to do that on the Noblesville School Board.
Thank you, Dr. Forgey. Our next opening is by Mrs. and Reverend Terry Ditzler, And Ms. Disler, you may proceed.
Thank you. And thank you, Chamber of Commerce, and also the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum tonight, and also Judge Barr for your continued leadership as you are just a well-established person in Noblesville, and I highly respect you. Why do I want to be on the Noblesville School Board? Well, I was a graduate of Noblesville Schools in 1976. My children all went to Noblesville High School and graduated. I have 2 children also now, grandchildren in the school system. One is special needs and one goes to Promise Elementary School. And so I have a passion to make sure that Noblesville remains the institution that it is and to be the best that she can be. I was there on May 25th when the incident occurred at Noblesville West. And well, I wasn't there at that moment, but my son who lives in Kansas City heard about the shooting and called me about 10 minutes after it had happened. So I ran home to get my clerics on, and I knew that I was going to be headed to the school. John called me, said, don't go to West, go to the high school. I spent the next 4 or 5 hours in that building with the kids, and it truly felt like I was in a war zone. But I felt like I was in my calling. Even though I wasn't one of the victims, I felt afterwards that I was sort of victimized. The domino effect of what had happened, bringing calm into the locker rooms when there was the second locker room, listening and hearing the fear in children's voices. But a lot of it was also watching the kids come together as one, coming together to show their support for one another, coming together and just being the best Noblesville can be. I saw the best in humanity there. I don't really have anything more to say right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Ditzler. And then our last opening will be by Mr. Jeff Bragg. And Mr. Bragg, you may continue.
Thank you, Judge Barr. My name is Jeff Bragg. First and foremost, I am very blessed to be married to my best friend and wife, Hannah Bragg, for the last 23 years. We have 3 amazing kids. Our son Braxton was a 2017 graduate of Noblesville High School. Our daughter Bella is currently a sophomore at Noblesville High School, and our youngest daughter Lily is in 6th grade at Noblesville East Middle School. I was hired in 1996 to be a teacher at Noblesville Intermediate School. I spent the next 21 years in education. Almost 20 of those years was here in Noblesville schools as a teacher, as the principal at the intermediate school, and also as the director of operations for 10 years for this district. In my time as the director of operations, I oversaw the day-to-day operations of this $100 million corporation. I had the opportunity to oversee $170 million worth of school construction, and that's new construction, that's additions, and that's renovations on every single building in this district. During every one of those projects, every project was completed on time and on budget. I was the director of school safety, and for 15 years, I was a member of the Indiana School Safety Specialist Academy advanced level training. I'm a certified ALICE trainer, and I was influential in bringing ALICE training to Noblesville schools. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about school safety and the next steps our district is going to take also with this community. I am very concerned about the gaps in teacher compensation, which you've already heard up here. We are losing teachers, and we're losing teachers during a national teacher shortage. My daughter came home this week and told me her 2 favorite teachers are leaving the district, and they're leaving to go next door for more money, and we can't blame them. Last but not least, we must address the growing mental health needs as a district, but also as a community. As a district, we can't do this by ourselves, but we have to do it collectively as a community. Thank you.
Thank you for your opening statements. As you've been informed, we do have 5 questions. You'll each be given a chance to respond to the question. In addition, you'll have 1 minute to provide your answer or response. We're going to start first with Dr. Bill. And so the first question is as follows. Why are you interested in being a part of the school board, and what personal strengths will you bring? And as sort of a side, assuming that you do not have, this is for anyone, children or grandchildren in the schools, then what would drive your interest in Noblesville School District? We'll start with you, Dr. Bill.
Well, what brings me here is I have worked in so many different capacities, and that I think I bring the skills and background. I've written a lot of grants too, and I think that those are reasons why I'm running. Been here 42 years, and I'm very concerned about students that are incarcerated, by the way, and but I've been around the mountain, and I'm a community person, and I've done a lot of research, investigating. I'm an independent thinker, and I do my best to develop policies and money and procedures for this.
Thank you, Dr. Bill. Mr. Bragg, again, why are you interested in being a part of the school board, and what personal strengths will you bring?
Well, I think I just told everybody what my personal strengths were, and certainly I have 3 reasons of why I'm interested, and I named those 2, but you know, there's a big misconception in education, and that what teachers do isn't always noble. And so when I left the profession 2 years ago and went into the business world, what I found is the business world doesn't work as long as education does. And when I say that, I mean hourly per day. And so the time that teachers and administrators put into their days is overwhelming. And so I have found that I have more time in my schedule during my days, and that's why I feel the need to come back and serve. I feel that my strengths will absolutely benefit this board, and that I think it's something that with my free time I can spend giving back to a community that I've already put 21 years into.
Thank you, Mr. Bragg. And Mrs. Reverend Ditzler, why are you interested in being a part of the school board, and what personal strengths will you bring?
So having been in politics, the woman behind the man for the last 15 years or so, I have been educated on how political systems work, how systems in general work. I think the public sees one side, and then behind the closed doors, the trustees are busy doing other things. So I understand that there is 2 sides to every story, that there are multiple layers, multiple facets of why things happen, why rules are made, why policies are made. I believe that sometimes that our policies are mired in law. I've been also educated in how the state works and how we're not getting money like we used to. I'm also a very good listener, and I'm compassionate. I know that I don't always have the answers, and when I don't have the answers, I go and ask the questions. I'm not afraid to ask questions, and I'm not afraid to risk doing things for the good of all.
Thank you. And Mr. Duell, again, why are you interested in being a part of the school board? What personal strengths will you bring to the board?
Well, I'm an educator. Throughout my entire career, I've been in education, different levels, secondary, post-secondary. Having earned my master's in education at The Ohio State University, I've been a classroom teacher, have taught as an adjunct professor at Indiana Wesleyan University, and currently have been working for the past 8 years in the teacher college at Western Governors University, where I serve both faculty and students as a faculty supervisor. And there I do advocate for those students who are pursuing their calling, pursuing their dreams to become licensed teachers, to make their impact and leave their mark with the students that they'll be teaching. And likewise, I want to provide that same sort of advocacy and support for Noblesville teachers and students. And really, I think I can sum it up quoting Lily Tomlin, who once said, "I always wondered why somebody doesn't do something about that. Then I realized I was somebody."
Thank you, Mr. Duell. And Mr. Durham, why are you interested in being a part of the school board, and what personal strengths will you bring to the board?
Absolutely, thank you. I mean, I have to ask first, who would not want to be part of such a great community and a great district? I mean, it's truly an honor to be able to serve on a board like that. As far as what strengths I bring, as Terry had mentioned, I, just like her, am a question asker. And it's something that's commonly frowned upon in meetings and different activities, but if you're afraid to ask the question, you're never going to get the answer. So I like to, challenge the decisions and try to look at things from different angles. And being a parent of 3 kids in this school district currently, it's something that's always been, on my mind. I want to get involved, and how better to get involved than to run for school board and be in a position to help make the correct decisions.
Thank you, Mr. Durham. Dr. Forkey, why are you interested in being a part of the school board?
Yes, I have 3 grandchildren currently attending, and I have 9 other grandchildren that are 4 and under, so hopefully we'll have a lot of grandchildren here, and that's one of my focuses, all right? I think something I can bring to the school board is I'm in and out of the community and been there a lot, and I think the school board is going to have to be instrumental over the next several years because of the way the funding has changed to help raise community interest in the way we fund schools, because it's been put by the state back on the local level for us to raise referendum money to make our schools work. I think I would be good at that because I'm in the community a lot and can speak to that. One particular interest I have moving forward on this school board issue, I currently have an intern in my office through the Noblesville internship program. We had one last year, of which we have since hired. I have a particular interest in that part of the thing and working with Ivy Tech to see what kind of things we can do for the children that may want to go into trades and that sort of thing.
Thank you, Dr. Forkey. And Mr. Lyda, you are last but not least. And why are you interested in being a part of the school board? What personal strengths will you bring?
Thank you. I have 3 children, 2 of which are still in the school, so I have a vested interest in their success, and I have the vested interest in the success of all children of Noblesville. I've served my community, helping kids in many capacities. I want to continue doing so. I want to ensure that our future business leaders and our workers will be successful and prepared. I bring skills that relate closely to the way kids learn today around technology. I bring skills that help with fiscal responsibility and ensuring that everything the school does is viable and that we're using the taxpayers' money in a wise way and that we're looking for creative ways to find more funding outside of referendums, outside of state funding itself. I really care about the community. I'm a lifelong resident for 20 years and hopefully a lot more, and I'll continue serving in any capacity I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lyda. We're going to proceed to our second question, and as you may recall, at least I've talked to all of the candidates. We're going to start next with the first response from Mr. Bragg. Before I give you that question, let me remind each of you, I think you're doing well with the microphones, and I think we're picking you up very well. However, I do know that you've been looking to me, which is fine. I appreciate that. However, the camera is straight away. And you may want to speak directly to the camera after you hear the question spoken by me. And the second question for you, and we'll start with Mr. Bragg, what from your civic leadership, educational, and professional experience has prepared you for this role as a board member of Noblesville Schools?
Well, certainly I think my background that I spoke to, certainly the 21 years in education, I was very, very blessed. You don't just come into these roles. I mean, I think we all have a purpose in life, and I think we're trying to figure out what that is. But when I became a teacher at NIS, I knew I wanted to be an administrator. I didn't know what that timeline was going to look like and when it happened. And then, I did take 2 years where I went to Tipton High School to be assistant principal, but I didn't know that timeline and coming back and being the principal was going to happen the way it did. I also didn't know that getting my superintendent's license was going to boost me into the director of operations role at a time when our district was ready to explode and eventually spend $170 million on expanding our buildings. And so, you know, some of those things I don't think we planned for. We just happened to be there, and we're pretty lucky through them. And I had an opportunity to be a part of something pretty special for this community, and I want to continue to serve in a capacity where I can help this community.
Thank you, Mr. Bragg. And next, Mrs. Reverend Ditzler, what from your civic leadership, educational, professional experience has prepared you for this role as a board member in Noblesville Schools?
My civic leadership has been very varied. I served on the Noblesville Planning Commission for 3 or 4 years, and I saw how that side of government works. I wasn't really a fan, just because I liked everybody to be happy, and everybody was always leaving mad one side or the other. So I am kind of a peacemaker, and I found that out rather quickly being on that board. I have been a graduate of the Noblesville Leadership Academy. I was a board member of Prevail and have volunteered there for many years. I am the president of Helping Hands of Noblesville, which is a nonprofit that raises money, and all of that money is given to charity. I'm a member of the Noblesville Unity and Diversity Committee. Diversity and unity is high on my priorities. I have organized many events. I've been a chamber ambassador, and I think that just being an ambassador for Noblesville and for Noblesville schools, I can't think of a better way to help our community in knowing who Noblesville Schools is.
Thank you, Reverend Ditzler. And Mr. Duell, what from your civic leadership, educational, professional experience has prepared you for the role as a member of the Board of School Trustees?
Well, my civics background really starts at base level in my education. I studied both political science and history at The Ohio State University, which led to me being an intern for an Ohio congressman. So I was very actively involved at the state level and had opportunities as well going to D.C. in similar capacities. But beyond that, in my current job, I have to be a problem solver. That's the inherent position that I hold. I work with licensing in 50 states. And as you might imagine, 50 states do things 50 different ways. And there's a lot of creative problem solving where I have to put on my Apollo 13 hat sometimes, because sometimes things don't work the way they're supposed to do. You have to creatively address them the way they are, not the way they ought to be. And really at its heart, I'm a servant leader. I really adhere to and embrace Robert Greenleaf's philosophy of servant leadership, that my position ultimately is to serve, and a servant listens and then leads.
Thank you, Mr. Duell. And Mr. Durham, what from your civic leadership, educational, professional experience has prepared you for this role as a board member of Noblesville Schools?
Absolutely, thank you. Well, from a professional standpoint, I am an analyst by nature, as I mentioned, so I spend my entire workday looking at problems across our business and trying to find solutions for them, which can be very tiring, but I always like to think of things outside the box and try to find new solutions and not just continue to look at things the same way. I'm also a member of the Noblesville Youth Assistance Board, and I spent my entire summer serving lunch to the underserved youth of Noblesville. And that was a very eye-opening experience to see the need within our own community. So that's really what drives me to want to be here and be on the school board.
Thank you, Mr. Durham. Dr. Forgey, again, it's your turn to respond. What from your civic leadership, educational, professional experience has prepared
I actually was an education major at Butler University and had a job offered to me in the 1970s at Noblesville High School, but the U.S. Army got in my way, as that was a time when we all had to serve. So I didn't get the teacher's job at Noblesville in 1970. I'm working my way back to Noblesville schools. I've been involved in all levels in pediatric dentistry of our state associations, our national associations, on licensing boards, and on on the board certification process that we go through for pediatric dentistry. Obviously involved in our local churches here, and I've been in and out of the schools for lots of years, going through lots of principals and lots of teachers. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Forgy. Mr. Lyda, again, what from your civic leadership, educational, professional experience has prepared you for this role as a member of the Board of Trustees of Noblesville Schools?
Thank you. I'm an engineer by education at Purdue University, and while that doesn't relate directly to education of students, what it has taught me is how to look at things with the eye of critical thinking, looking outside the box, finding what is the normal, but what could be different. What are other ways to do things that we maybe are doing them today? Maybe there's a better way to do something. And that could be broadly painted across educational methods, the way the schools operate, anything within that realm applies to critical thinking. From a professional background, I've mentioned my passion and where I serve in the work community around technology. I think we have to ask ourselves, how do kids learn in the digital age? Are we adapting that? Are we adapting for kids who don't learn that way? And are we answering all the right questions about the use of technology within our classrooms?
Thank you, Mr. Lyda. And lastly, Dr. Bill, what from your civic leadership, educational, professional experience has prepared you for this role as a member of the Board of Trustees?
Well, I've served in leadership positions on a variety of boards, appointments from the governors, and mental health and public health, and doing what's right. And then I have management experience in healthcare and in higher education, and that I very appropriate, and enormous grant and budget planning, teaching experiences, and I think that I will be a real asset to this board in looking at different ways to handle funding issues. And I'm going to have some ideas for how to help our students learn how to learn.
Thank you, Dr. Bill. I think it might be appropriate if we be just a little bit more specific here in our next question. And we'll start this question with Mrs. Reverend Ditzler. A key role of a school board member is to appropriately manage funds for the district. What type of financial experience do you have, and what are your views on investing in education? That is to say, school funding mechanisms.
Can I have that question again, please?
Yes. The key role of a school board member is to appropriately manage funds for the district. What type of financial experience do you have, and what are your views on investing in education?
So I see my role with the budgeting, with financial, to become as educated as possible. I understand that there's a little boot camp that happens so that all questions are answered, and that the school trustees are educated, and I will be asking a lot of questions. I do think that if this referendum doesn't pass for some reason, we're going to have to become imaginative and creative and find new ways to find sourcing of funds, grants. More people will have to be involved with that.
Thank you. Mr. Dool, again to you. The key role of a school board member is to appropriately manage funds for the district. What type of financial experience do you have, and what are your views on investing in education?
I'm going to echo Terry in that is not my area of expertise. I have not been a business owner or run a major corporation, but I am a Socratic thinker. I ask questions, I listen, I learn, and I am not a rubber stamp with any topic, funding, academic or otherwise. So I'll certainly listen to, take in the information that's given to me. And the key is always looking at things in its entire context. I come from a background in both history and theology where context is king. So I would certainly ask the questions, learn, and also be a good listener and collaborate with my colleagues on that.
Thank you, Mr. Duell. Mr. Durham, again, a key role of a school board member is to appropriately manage funds for the district. What type of financial experience do you have, and what are your views on investing in education?
Absolutely. So I have financial experience with my current job, but not a ton of it. And I have managed a budget as the president of our school's PTO board, but obviously not a $107 million budget. So that is a huge budget to have control over, but I do believe in fiscal responsibility and accountability on all facets. So to me, and one of my things was transparency. We have to be transparent with the community on how we're spending the money, especially when we're asking for $50 million plus referendums. And as far as investing in our education, it's very important. I think that teacher salaries are very important, because if we're not paying teachers a good salary, then they don't have the desire to teach aside from loving it, which all the teachers that I know love it, and they do it because they love it. But at the end of the day, we have to make a living, so we must invest in that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Durham. Dr. Forgy, once again, a key role of a school board member is to appropriately manage funds for the district. What type of financial experience do you have, and what are your views on investing in education?
And as I mentioned from the start, I've ran my own business in town for 40 years, and you have to manage it. You have to manage the budget and make a payroll and do this. So I got a good background in managing budgets. Now, as far as why we want to do this, back to the children. It's the most important thing we do is educate these children. So first thing is, let's look at the children, get them educated. But the second thing we have to look at is what does this do to our community? If we have a great school system, that makes our community better. And the third thing is good for business. And as we learned at the chamber meeting today, unless you have businesses in town, the taxpayer, the individual taxpayer, is going to pay more taxes. We need businesses to come to town so we can attract more tax base, so each of the individual homeowners don't have to pay as much.
Thank you, Dr. Forgy. And Mr. Lyda, once again, a key role of a school board member is to appropriately manage funds for the district. What type of financial experience do you have, and what are your views on investing in education?
Thank you. As president of Noblesville Youth Baseball, I had a tremendous amount of experience in running an organization as a nonprofit, increasing revenue over 3 years over 75%. We did that through creative fundraising. We did that on cost containment. We did that through community sponsorships. That directly translates to what a school board member can and should do. Look for areas within the community to involve them in the educational process. That means businesses, that means individuals, that means finding creative fundraising. Investing in education is table stakes. That's a given. We have to do that. How could we step away from that and not educate our youth? It just doesn't make sense. So investing in that is imperative. And one of my platform items was fiscal responsibility. So that's one of the things I'm most in favor of. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lyda. Dr. Bill, a key role of a school board member is to appropriately manage funds for the district. What type of financial experience do you have, and what are your views on investing in education?
Well, I was Chief Financial Officer for Elkhart County Health Department, which at the time was second largest in the state. And I've been a CEO of a 4-county community mental health center, which I had complete authority over all budgeting and funding, and done a lot of successful things there. I was department head and ambulatory care assistant administrator for all the outpatient programs at Riley Children's Hospital, and financial acuity, and I think those experiences elevating in terms of my abilities and experience, a lot of experience.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Bill. And last, I believe, Mr. Bragg, the key role of a school board member is to appropriately manage funds for the district. What type of financial experience do you have? What are your views on investing in education?
Thank you. Absolutely. My background in school finance, school budgets, and school operations, I think I've talked about. We all know that we have a strong city here, but this strong city does not exist without strong schools. And it's imperative that that we vote yes for our schools on November 6th. Investing in our education, it's a no-brainer. You know, when we all went to schools, our parents invested for us. It's just a different time, as Dr. Forgy said earlier. You know, we have to actually go out and ask the public for permission to do it now. When we were in school, our schools didn't have to ask. Our parents, you know, they just did it. Now it's a little bit different, but we have to be able to educate the public. But more importantly than anything, that vote has to be yes on November 6th.
These next two questions somewhat are intertwined with the school referendum that's been adopted by the current school board. You're welcome to address that issue if you wish. But we're going to start this question with Mr. Dool. And this first question is as follows. Noblesville Schools is currently struggling with the loss of high-quality teachers and staff due to non-competitive salaries. What are your views on how to best address this situation?
Well, certainly we're in the right direction, having it be a public matter being discussed. I don't think it was common knowledge up until recently. I learned about it beforehand, about the disparity in pay, when one of my daughter's teachers last year noted that he was leaving for Carmel to make $10,000 more. And for me, I think that certainly from that perspective, we're making the right step in the right direction in terms of addressing that disparity. But there are a number of ways to recruit and retain teachers. Teachers who are successful and happy tend to remain in their placements, and also one's working teaching conditions are a major predictor of retaining or losing teachers. So we need to focus on safety still, providing a reasonably safe teaching environment for both students and teachers alike, and also give them more say in terms of the curriculum and the type of assessments that we have to offer our students.
Thank you, Mr. Dool. Mr. Durham, once again, Noblesville Schools is currently struggling with the loss of high-quality teachers and staff due to non-competitive salaries. What are your views on how to best address this situation?
Absolutely. Well, as much as I love the current administration and the current board, and I helped with the PAC on the last referendum, it wasn't as apparent at that time that we were making a mistake. It's worded as we were maintaining the status quo, but that's not what we are as a community. We're not here to maintain the status quo. We're here to be the best that we can be. So knowing that now, looking back, that's why we're in the position that we're in, having to pass another referendum 2 years later. And that's where we're going to struggle as a community, is to pull everybody together to pass this referendum, because it's just 2 years later. So in the community's eyes, we could be making the same mistake again. But I think that we have to pass this referendum, and we have to at least try to catch up with the neighboring districts. But we really want to strive to be the best. So.
Thank you, Mr. Durham. Dr. Forgy, again, Noblesville Schools is currently struggling with the loss of high-quality teachers and staff due to non-competitive salaries. What are your views on how to best address this situation?
I think where we have to start is partly with the state. I think we all, and it's going to take all of us, need to lobby our state legislatures, because that's where the problem was kind of created. They've pushed it down to us to finance what we need to. We currently receive probably $46 million less money than we did back through 2010. So we need to lobby our state legislatures first. Now, we all, as school board members, as community members or interested in school, we're going to have to lobby the community, because only 70% of the people are going to be in this community don't have children in the schools. So we need, all of us, community need to really work hard at doing this, because we have to have funding, and the only way we're going to get it is to get it voted in. It's not like we can just, anybody can say we're going to fund teachers. We're going to have the community step up and help us do this. So I support the referendum and all of us that are interested in Noblesville schools and retaining teachers, because they're going to drive down the road 10 minutes to get $10,000 more money. It's just, they're taking care of their own families.
Thank you, Dr. Forgey. Mr. Lyda, Noblesville Schools, again, is currently struggling with the loss of high-quality teachers and staff due to non-competitive salaries. And what are your views on how to best address this situation?
Thank you. I'm voting yes on November 6th, and I hope you all as well will. But I think pay is only one consideration. Certainly, the referendum will help to close the gap and shore that up as much as possible. I think we also must give, to attract and retain, give the teachers an environment they want to continue working here. Give them the ability to teach, allow them to be creative, invest in their continual education, and most importantly, give them a safe environment. A lot of teachers didn't sign up to be the security for their classrooms, but that's the reality we live in today. So if we can help them do that in a proper manner that doesn't take away from the educational environment, that will also help to retain teachers as well.
Thank you, Mr. Lyda. Dr. Bill, Noblesville Schools is currently struggling with the loss of high-quality teachers and staff due to non-competitive salaries. What are your views on how to best address this situation?
Well, first of all, let's not just assume that teachers leave for money. That isn't the case. I've talked to many teachers here because I've done a lot of substitute teaching and a lot of lunchroom conversations. Yes, some of them do for financial reasons leave the area. Many of them don't leave because their families are here and they're loyal to these students. But I think that if I were going to look at that referendum with open eyes, yes, we need to finance the teachers first and foremost before we start worrying quite so much about additional safeties money. And we're a wonderful school system, very talented teachers, and they're not all here, I'll tell you that right now, to just here for more money.
Thank you, Dr. Bill. Mr. Bragg, the same question to you. Noblesville Schools is currently struggling with the loss of high-quality teachers and staff due to non-competitive salaries. What are your views on how to best address this situation?
Well, certainly, I think everybody has touched on this, but certainly along with what's been said, the ISBA, or the Indiana School Boards Association, is the direct line of communication for school board members to the General Assembly. School board members can have an impact with legislation. That's certainly something that has to happen moving forward, but we are losing teachers, and we're losing teachers in the middle of a teacher shortage, which I mentioned before, and it's going to be really hard for us to make up for that if we don't do something about it now. This referendum has to pass, and I believe there was a percentage out there I heard that about 70% of those leaving are leaving for money, and so there aren't very many people. I just said earlier, my daughter lost 2 of her favorite teachers. This week she was told they're leaving, and they're leaving for money. And so $10,000 to $12,000 to $15,000 a year, that's a major impact for families. People that are walking out not wanting to leave, but they're leaving because of the impact it's having on their families.
Thank you, Mr. Bragg. Mrs. Reverend Ditzler, you've heard the question several times, but let me restate it. Noblesville Schools is currently struggling with the loss of high-quality teachers and staff due to non-competitive salaries. What are your views on how to best address this situation?
Well, I'm very glad to hear that everybody that is running for school board trustee is pro-referendum. It's interesting to me that I had a local politician, not my husband, say to me, "Don't hang your hat on the referendum. Don't be so positive about it because you want to get elected," and that just goes against my grain quite a bit. I have to be who I am. I have to be real, and I have to say what I think. So I'm glad that we all agree that the referendum is a must to keep our teachers for better mental health advocacy for our students and also our teachers, and also for better safety. So I am very pro referendum all the way.
Thank you. At least for the moment, the last question that has been prepared is going to be addressed first to Mr. Durham, and also somewhat relates to the referendum that's been adopted by our current Noblesville School Board. Mr. Durham, following the events of May 25, safety and mental health became an increased focus for Noblesville schools and the community. How do you plan to support the district in these efforts?
Well, I think that's a complicated question because there's really no good answer for that. No one out here has a good answer to how we can solve this problem. In talking through the referendum meetings and all the safety individuals that have been involved in the decision making with the current board and current administration, there's a lot of great ideas, and I see more and more people posting great ideas every day, but it's really difficult to put all of your money into one thing hoping that it's going to work, and then what do you do if something happens again? So I think it's something that we all have to kind of take a step back and look at very carefully, and see where is the money going to be best spent.
Thank you, Mr. Durham. Dr. Forgey, again to you. Following the events of May 25, safety and mental health became an increased focus for Noblesville schools and the community. How do you plan to support the district in these efforts?
I had two grandchildren in the school that day, and my voice still cracks thinking about that, as I was a long way from home and couldn't get home to deal with this thing. So I have a concern about safety, and hopefully our referendum that we are going to pass is going to provide more resources to deal with this. Now, how do we spend that? All right, it's going to be difficult. I think we have to listen to parent groups, listen to the school board, listen to the administrators, listen to the local police, state police, and federal people to try to figure out what are best practices to protect the children. We can't build a moat around the school. I mean, we don't have enough money to lock it down so nobody gets there. So we're going to have to work really hard and very diligently at figuring out what are the absolute best practices we can use.
Thank you, Dr. Forgey. Mr. Lyda, once again, following the events of May 25, safety and mental health became an increased focus for Noblesville schools and the community. How do you plan to support the district in these efforts?
Thank you. I think we have to continue advocating for additional security measures. It's one thing to say we're going to respond quicker, and if something happens again, we're going to stop it sooner. That's great. How do we prevent it from happening again? There's both the physical aspect of security, the building itself, but then you go beyond that to the buses, to the bus stops. Where do you start beyond that? You go to the individual's heart, to their mental health. I think it starts at home, but the school can play a vital role in that by educating kids, by educating parents. Parents who need maybe guidance on how to deal with a child who is acting out or acting up. So the mental health initiatives that are part of the referendum are imperative, and they will help do that, but I think we can't just do it inside the school. I think we have to push that to the homes as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lyda. Dr. Bill, again to you. Following the events of May 25, safety and mental health became an increased focus for Noblesville schools and the community. How do you plan to support the district in these efforts?
I think funding in general needs to stay with helping students to learn how to learn. And the matter of mental health and security, they're not in a position to deal with that. You know, I worked with the State Department of Corrections for several years, and with students incarcerated at the state facility of Logansport Juvenile Intake and Diagnostic Center. A lot of very some dangerous students, 20 a week, evaluated them for suicides and so on. We're not going to save every situation. We had one episode in May. Have we ever had one before in 100 years of the school system here? To simply start addressing it with funding, this is the initial funding. Where does it begin and where does it end? And so I think we need to take a more serious look at the long-term funding that's necessary to keep schools safe.
Thank you, Dr. Bill. And again, Mr. Bragg, following the events of May 25, safety and mental health became an increased focus for Noblesville schools and the community. How do you plan to support the district in these efforts?
Well, safety should always be a #1 priority for us. It's something that's always been a #1 priority for me, and I certainly believe that's where the district is. But, you know, the thing about safety, it's ever-changing and evolving. So no matter what happens in the next year or two, the year after that, whoever it is that's dealing with safety will be looking at what measures are in place right now to change and to make it better. And so it's ever evolving, and it's times change, and so do the safety measures that are there. So it always has to be a #1 top priority. Mental health, it is not just a K-12 issue. It's a national issue. We've seen professional athletes come out and say the issues that they're having. I'm sure probably half of us in here have anxiety at times in our own life. I had anxiety my whole life, didn't realize until I had kids what it actually was. And then when one of your kids has it, you're like, oh, that's me. And so, you know, once you deal with issues, it's easier to address. You know, it's hard to educate students also that have health concerns, needs, and that's why we're here to try to add it, a little bit more of it into our schools.
Thank you, Mr. Bragg. Mrs. and Reverend Ditzler, once to you. Following the events of May 25, safety and mental health became an increased focus for Noblesville schools and the community. How do you plan to support the district in these efforts?
I'm going to call the mayor's office. A couple years ago, and I'm a little bit serious on that, a couple years ago the city came forward and had an initiative that they partnered with the school, and it was talking about soft skills with business employees, soft skills at the student level. And I think that we could have another initiative, another community-wide initiative to take, you know, once a month to highlight things like depression, things like suicide, things like anxiety, and really speak up, have storytelling all around our community. When people speak up and when they're vulnerable about their own issues around mental health, about fear in general, you know, we're a very fearful community, so talking about fear would be a great thing to talk about. But I think the community needs to get on board to support our students and our teachers and our administrators.
Thank you, Reverend Ditzler. And again, lastly, Mr. Duell, following the events of May 25, safety and mental health became an increased focus for Noblesville schools in the community. And how do you plan to support the district in these efforts?
Already have planned. SOS Noblesville presented to the school board on March 20th proposing the emergency response system that complies with the Indiana Department of Homeland Security guidelines found in Public Law 27. And Max Schachter, whose son tragically died at Parkland, has been using our proposed plan of Indiana's best practice, presenting it to DC to create the nation's best practice. We have a laundry list of endorsements from across the state and the nation. And Tim Troyer, president of the Indiana Sheriff's Association, wrote our Chief Jowett after going to Parkland, noting that I came away with a completely different perspective on school safety. There are many discussions occurring today on this topic. More guns, no guns, arming teachers, more SROs, better mental health, better detection methods, laws, etc. All of these are worthy discussion. However, they are so polarizing us from actually doing something meaningful. I firmly believe that until we secure the classroom environment and school structure as a safe zone for our children attending, all other topics we examine are minimized greatly.
Thank you, Mr. Duell. All right, as I indicated to you at the beginning, we had 5 questions. Actually, we have many questions, but the first 5 questions had been prepared by representatives of the League of Women Voters and members of the Chamber of Commerce. The persons here in the audience have submitted questions to a panel, and those questions have been then rewritten and are being presented to you. They're a little bit more specific, and we're going to start first with Dr. Forgey. And the first question from our audience is, what do you feel is one of the most pressing issues teachers face in the classroom? And what solution can you offer?
Coming from my background, I see the same population that teachers do, all right? And some terms thrown around are helicopter parents and lawnmower parents. I think you ought to let children make things on their own. So I think that's one issue that I see teachers facing. Now, another issue, I think this compensation thing is a big issue for them when they know that they can drive down the road and make $10,000 more. So they have a lot of issues for the amount of money they make. So I think my biggest thing would be, let's get them a pay raise.
Thank you, Dr. Forgey. Mr. Lyda, again, what do you feel is one of the most pressing issues teachers face in the classroom, and what solution can you offer?
I think the distractions are the biggest problem teachers face, and that can vary from things such as class sizes, too many kids, disparate learning styles of kids. Helicopter parenting is a fantastic example of that as well. And we've beat this drum a lot tonight, but safety is now one more thing that they have to deal with in a long list. And now it's become even more important, not only for the kids, but for themselves. The role of the board is to help reduce the distractions, allow the teachers to teach, give them the tools they need, take away the things that they don't need to deal with so that they can teach. And I think class sizes and pay is a big, big part of that, which is what the referendum can go to directly affect.
Thank you, Mr. Lyda. We'll go to you, Dr. Bill. Again, what do you feel is one of the most pressing issues teachers face in the classroom, and what solution can you offer?
Helping students learn how to learn is the #1 mission of any school. And anything that violates that causes real problems. American Psychological Association back a while back and demonstrated 5 learning styles going on in each and every one of us. We have a propensity for one of those that you can work in some of the others, but teacher in the classroom's got to try and wrestle with students that are learning in different learning modes. So we need to address means and to understand these students, and a teacher cares about students is extremely important because they're all different and they're all coming to learning from a different point of view in one of these 5 styles, and that's the most important thing.
Thank you, Dr. Bill. Mr. Bragg, what do you feel is one of the most pressing issues teachers face in the classroom, and what solution can you offer?
Well, with teachers, there's a lot of pressing issues today. If those of you that have never been educators, if you can imagine having 25 or 30 kids in your class, all at different educational levels, all at different backgrounds, it's a lot like driving a bus. We expect the bus driver to take care of all those kids in the back and everybody be good and pay attention. But a teacher wears so many hats, it's unbelievable. But absolutely, the safety and compensation piece for me is at the top of the list. Teachers should always feel safe. Our kids should feel safe. If they don't, we're not going to be able to get to the most important piece of what they're coming for, and that's learning. And compensation, we've got to get it up there, because when teachers are stressed, it is very easy to say, you know, I can go next door for $12,000 or $15,000 more and have the exact same headaches.
Thank you, Mr. Bragg. Reverend Mrs. Terry Ditzler, what do you feel is one of the most pressing issues teachers face in the classroom, and what solution can you offer?
Besides safety, I think some teachers feel handicapped by curriculum. by having to teach to the standardized tests. I don't know if the board can do anything about that or not because it's all state mandated. That's one of them. My daughter teaches science at Fishers High School, and so I hear her lamenting quite a bit. Last year she taught freshman biology where 80% of the kids didn't want to be there. So that was an issue. Now she's teaching anatomy and forensic science. She had an incident in her room last week where male students got up and started pacing around, started yelling at kids, started pointing fingers. She was petrified. She couldn't get between. She called down to the desk and they wanted to know why. They wanted a security officer and were asking why when there was all sorts of things going on. She left the school in tears. And I think safety is on the mind of some teachers. I don't know if it's all of them, but safety is definitely a concern.
Thank you, Reverend Disler. And Mr. Duell, what do you feel is one of the most pressing issues teachers face in the classroom, and what solution can you offer?
Teachers answering the call to teach want to teach, but oftentimes they're handcuffed. And I'm going to echo Terry a little bit once again and note that about 25% of public school teachers who leave the profession do so because they report dissatisfaction with the lack of influence they have on school assessments and accountability measures for the teaching or curriculum. Others note that the focus on testing, test preparation, and a narrower mandated curriculum have reduced their ability to teach in ways they feel are most effective. We need to really encourage the participation and collaboration of our veteran and innovative teachers, including them, hearing them, allowing them to have more influence on the subjects that they teach. Teachers want to teach, let's take the gloves off and let them teach. And from the safety perspective, I work for a teacher college. I'm working with prospective teachers, people who haven't even yet got into the classroom like me and others up here. And we have people who are actually changing majors or leaving because they're so concerned about safety and what they see in the news. Safety is definitely always a present reality.
Thank you, Mr. Duell. And Mr. Durham, what do you feel is one of the most pressing issues teachers face in the classroom, and what solution can you offer?
As Mr. Bragg had said, there are a lot of issues, and I don't have personal experience. I'm not a teacher, but from what I hear from the teachers that I interact with, you know, they wear too many hats. They're expected to be teachers first and foremost, counselors, social workers, security guards. So all of those piled on to the fact that they are underpaid around the county, it causes a lot of issues, a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety that's unnecessary. So I think that adding some of the additional positions that have been recommended, you know, counselors for the elementary schools that are overworked, and some social workers to help take some of that load off of the teachers so that they can get back to teaching, which is what they got in this profession for. I think that's one of the most important pieces.
Thank you, Mr. Durham. Let's see, I believe we're ready for our next question for Mr. Lyda, and that is, how can we better serve the students in our district with special needs?
All kids learn differently, and I think kids with special needs can still learn. Obviously, we have to create a welcoming environment. We have to provide all of the necessary educational systems that a special ed need or special needs student may require. Excuse me. That can include physical adaptations as well as how the teaching is done for them. I think investing in them is important. We've seen time and time again they become productive members of society, and I think unfortunately at times they get left behind. So it's important to continue investing in them. I saw the video recently as part of the Miller Ambassadors Program where they rebuilt all of the playgrounds, and now special needs students can play. The quote I saw, which was really, I'm paraphrasing, but it was very powerful, was, "Finally, now I can play at playtime." So it's important to continue that and work even harder to adapt further. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lyda. Dr. Bill, how can we better serve the students in our district with special needs?
I think it's the key there is study just exactly what can we do for these students. number one mission in public schools is helping students learn to learn, regardless of how, what their capacities are. Different kids have different capacities. And so you have to have caring teachers that care regardless of the income issue. And that's vitally important. I wrote the Title 20 grant to set up Janus Developmental Center in this community 30 years ago. And I'm telling you, many of the people there one time were in the schools. Yes, we need to take care of them. I'm glad you asked the question because we don't know what to do all the time for these children. But they definitely need attention, and we need the money to make sure that we're providing services that are necessary for them.
Thank you, Dr. Bill. Mr. Bragg, how can we better serve the students in our district with special needs?
Well, certainly we need to make sure that we have specialized teachers to serve the needs of all students. We've all heard it, every student, every day. And I look at this beyond just a special ed issue. We have to have someone in place for every student. We all learned in this room at a different pace. We all might have gone through 9th grade at one point, but some of us it clicked on the first week and some of us it clicked on the last day. And you know, our kids are no different today. They're more stressed than we were. And so certainly having the resources for every single child every single day is what's important.
Thank you, Mr. Bragg. Mrs. Reverend Ditzler, how can we better serve the students in our district with special needs?
Well, I don't know if I'm qualified to answer that because I don't know all the special needs teachers and the programs. However, I do have a grandson that's in a special needs classroom at North Elementary, and he's doing so wonderful. They didn't think he'd be able to walk or talk, and he just had his IEP yesterday, and he was like #1 in math for all kindergartens and at North, not even special needs. So you have these kids who are labeled special needs, but I think all kids are special needs. I think everybody has, I think all children have something going on in them. And while, of course, I love the PT and the OT and the speech therapy that happens and the specialized attention, there's a lot of kids that are lost in the middle. And I know a lot of kids with anxiety and with some mental health issues that could certainly use a little bit more support.
Thank you, Reverend Ditzler. Mr. Duell, how can we better serve the students in our district with special needs?
As a teacher, I've witnessed both. I've witnessed the closed classroom where the special ed classroom is physically put like on the other side of the building away from everyone, and even taught in that environment for a year in Columbus, Ohio once. And I've been here in Indiana where I taught in an inclusive classroom where in the same classroom I had someone with a 156 IQ and another one of the students went on to get his PhD in Iowa, but I also had someone with Down syndrome. And I've seen how amazing an inclusive classroom can be when you really include them, not push them aside. And I've seen amazing testimonials of varsity athletes reaching out during the cafeteria. And I think it's the culture. And the culture is important because it's crucial who we hire. When we're recruiting teachers, we want to make sure we find a good fit who share our vision, our passion, our commitment for our students. And I think key is really hiring great special ed teachers, special teachers for special kids.
Thank you, Mr. Duell. Mr. Durham, how can we better serve the students in our district with special needs?
Well, I don't personally have a lot of experience with how we currently do things outside of the school that my children go to at Hinkle Creek Elementary. And the special needs program there is fantastic. Every time I'm in that school, I see the teachers interacting with those kids, and they get to come out and join in with all the other children and get to participate in a lot of the activities. We even do special things for them, you know, where we have our fun run. We do an adaptive course so that they can participate in that as well, and I think that's great. And I think that, as Terry said, and I didn't think anyone else would say it, but all children are special needs. I mean, in some capacity. When I was in school, we didn't have this open concept learning. And when they introduced that at our elementary school, I thought it was fantastic because I was someone who would have benefited from that open concept of learning and not just sitting in a seat staring at a chalkboard. So I think we continue to adapt and continue to find ways to teach kids better, how they better learn.
Thank you, Mr. Durham. Dr. Forgey, how can we better serve the students in our district with special needs?
You know, I've had the good fortune to treat most of these children at the office over the years, and to watch them from the time they're little children until we see them into their adulthood, and to watch what the school system has done with these children over the past years to make them fit into society and feel a part of it. Some of our greatest days at the office are when these special needs kids come in, because they offer up stuff that nobody else offers up, and it's a wonderful feeling to treat them. Now, as I go to West Middle School and talk to the special needs class out there, it's great to see that as a part of the inclusion they bring. I know my granddaughter is in the class with them some certain period to be a part of what they do. So the way they include them out there, but again, to watch this happen over the years, to see these children who are pretty special needs become, to fit into society and the best that they can absolutely do is a special thing. And I think Noblesville currently does a pretty good job of it.
Thank you, Dr. Forgey. We've talked about Noblesville schools. We've talked a little bit about each of you and your qualifications. This last question really relates to your role as a representative of our community. And we'll start with back to you, Dr. Bill. School board members must successfully address the many competing and contradictory interests in the community. How will you address issues that constituents raise?
Well, you know, I'm a listener by profession and a scientist, and I'm sorry, well, and I will continue to listen what people have to say in the community while I decide in my mind what are our options. And my goodness, I haven't been appointed by governors and commissioners and to address questions, very complicated questions. And you know, I have a daughter with Down syndrome, by the way. I took her out of the public schools in second grade because they said she'll never learn to read. I put her in a private Christian school here, and she learned to read clear up through the sixth grade. And there's a lot of things going on out there in the community with children, both with disabilities and other ones. I'm going to be there to listen before I make my judgments as to what we ought to do.
Thank you, Dr. Bill. Mr. Bragg, school board members must successfully address the many competing and contradictory interests in the community. How will you address issues that constituents raise?
Certainly. This is a servant leadership role for all of us that are up here, and certainly the current board members and any of the two here that get selected. And so moving forward, knowing that, I mean, you have to be open, you have to be able to listen, you have to be able to be available. You're certainly not going to agree with every opinion that comes your way, and you're probably going to agree with some that do. But regardless of your personal opinion and what that is, you are that conduit for your community, and that's what this role is. And so you need to be able to be available to get that, to understand what the concerns are, so you can sit down with the rest of the board and address those concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Bragg. Mrs. Reverend Ditzler, school board members must successfully address the many competing and contradictory interests in the community. So how will you address issues that constituents raise?
Gosh, I'm a pastor of a church. I do that every Sunday. It's respecting the person that's in front of you. It's listening, as the other two gentlemen said, and giving time, of course. But at the end of the day, we need to make decisions on what's best for the community, what's best for children. So I think, you know, conflict is good because it uncovers questions. Healthy conflict, learning how to agree to disagree, and then having, having the face of the school knowing what you should say and what you shouldn't say in private discussions. Confidentiality is something else that's very important. Knowing how to talk to the news media is very important. And being a team player is very important.
Thank you. And Mr. Duell, again, school board members must successfully address the many competing and contradictory interests in the community. How will you address those issues that constituents raise?
Well, our differences certainly do make us stronger, and I might even challenge the notion that they are competing and contradictory. Perhaps we might phrase it seemingly competing and seemingly contradictory, and maybe we have more common ground than may first appear. And we find that common ground, and we can forge a partnership with those differences, striving to really ensure that the community and schools can partner, because each voice enriches us and ennobles us, and each voice that we don't hear, that's lost, really does diminish us. We have an amazing community in Noblesville to draw support from, many resources, many talented individuals that just humble me when I hear their stories and see what they're doing. And I think there are ways that we can turn our competitors, those who seem to be contradicting us, perhaps to, in fact, find that common ground I spoke of and really find that it's the community, it's at the heart of it, that's our common ground.
Thank you, Mr. Duell. Mr. Durham, school board members must successfully address the many competing and contradictory interests in the community. How will you address issues that constituents raise?
I think first and foremost, as some of the other candidates had said, listening is important. We have to listen to the community, not just at school board meetings, but public forums and sitting down and talking to community members and community leaders, because there's a lot of great ideas in this community, and we're not going to figure out what they are unless we sit down and listen. And some people don't feel comfortable coming forward at school board meetings. So I think something like that, sitting down and just talking in a casual setting, and figuring out what some of the ideas are. Obviously, we're not all going to agree on everything. That would be a perfect world. But we have to sit down, talk to people, and then come together as a board and talk through everything and decide what's the best course of action, first and foremost for the students, then the teachers, and the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Durham. Dr. Forgey, school board members must successfully address the many competing and contradictory interests in the community. How will you address issues that constituents raise?
As I said before, I had the opportunity to learn from the best. My late wife was the best, and I saw this happen over the 8-year period that she did exactly like we're all talking about. We have to be the conduit back to the school system. We need to be out in the community for people that are again, like you said, uncomfortable, maybe talking at the public thing. They want to come, and I think we probably all are pretty good listeners. I think that's a major part of our job, is to be out there and take those calls. People want to meet with them. And again, we're not all going to agree, but we owe everybody the time to listen to them if they're a part of Noblesville schools.
Thank you, Dr. Forgey. Mr. Lyda, you're last in this question, but giving you the chance to answer as well. School board members must successfully address the many competing and contradictory interests in the community. How will you address issues that constituents raise?
Thank you. I'm used to conflict. Everybody has their best idea on how to run a baseball program, how to run a baseball tournament, how everything should look and feel. So I'm used to that. I'm fine being a sounding board. I think the keys are to empathize with people's position or beliefs, accept that they have a valid viewpoint, make sure to educate myself regularly, meeting with Dr. Niedermeyer, meeting with other board members, meeting with other administrators and teachers so that I understand what is happening holistically before the question is even asked. It's certainly within their right to ask the question, and then we take that back, talk about it as a board of trustees, and make decisions accordingly.
Thank you, Mr. Lyda. I have many more questions. However, our time is running out. So as I've indicated, each of you do have 1.5 minutes to make a close or a final statement, as you feel it may be called. We're going to go in reverse order of the opening statements. And so the first person that will be giving a close will be Mr. Bragg. And Mr. Bragg, you may proceed.
Thank you. I believe my background with school safety and my connections with school safety at the state level is a major asset for this board and our district. I believe my history with Noblesville schools, with school finance, with school budgets, and school operations is an absolute asset for this board and our district. I believe my connections with city officials, with police, fire, and sheriff departments is a major asset for this board and our district. And I believe my connections with superintendents and school board members across the state is a major asset for this board and our district. We must keep our school safety as a top priority in this district, and we must fix the gaps in teacher compensation and keep our outstanding teachers here in Noblesville schools. Last but not least, we must address the mental health needs of students as a district, but also as a community. I have a unique skill set that is absolutely a major asset for this board, for our kids, our district, and our city. I would love the opportunity to serve our school community in this leadership role, and I would appreciate your vote on November 6th.
Thank you, Mr. Bragg. Mrs. and Reverend Ditzler, you are next on our closing, and you may proceed.
I would love to serve on Noblesville School Board. I like the word school trustee better. I think that serving on the school board is more of a trust issue. I believe that my time in civic duty and in the community has best prepared me for such a time as this. My denomination, which is Lutheran, the bishop told us and has asked faith leaders to get more involved in civic issues. Sister Tracy Horan, who is she's a nun from St. Mary of the Woods, where I graduated. Her vocation is social justice. And she taught me a few months ago about the saying that the two legs of love is charity and justice. Churches are used to giving food to the hungry and clothing the naked and visiting those in prison. But what do we do about the justice side? What do we do about the action? How do we address where children are suffering, where parents are struggling, and where communities have issues? I believe that it's not only charity but justice issue to serve well on the school board, and I ask for your vote in November.
Thank you, Reverend Ditzler. Dr. Forgy, you are third on our list, and you may proceed with your closing.
All right. I'd like to thank all of you for coming. Now, we've kind of all addressed up here, Noblesville schools don't get better just with us. They only get better with all of you. Thank all of you for coming and having interest, because we need your support to have good community schools. And I'd like to thank the other 6 people up here. I'm tickled we have 7 people running for 2 slots, okay? And I think we're in good hands after hearing what's going on tonight. I'd be happy to serve with any one of you if I'm elected. And if I'm not elected, I'll do what I did 40 years ago. I walked across the street to the old Federal Hill building, walked upstairs to the superintendent's office, said, I'm a new guy in town. I'm going to work in the same area of age group of kids that your school educates. What can I do to help make Noblesville schools better? I would find it a privilege to be a member of the Noblesville School Board, and I'd appreciate your vote.
Thank you, Dr. Forgy. Mr. Lyda, you are next on our list, and you may proceed with your closing.
Thank you to the Noblesville Chamber of Commerce and the League of Women Voters for this opportunity. Thank you for those present today. I appreciate your attendance. I want to reiterate that I have a desire to serve our community. I want to make sure that we continue driving our schools forward and we recognize the importance that they play in our society in grooming our future workers, our future business owners, and our future leaders. Let's make Noblesville schools the place where teachers leave their current job to come to instead of leaving us to go elsewhere. We know where they're going. Let's flip that around and make them come here. My experience as a community leader and a business professional positions me well to have insight, ideas, strengths, and creativity needed to continue the school's prosperity. I would appreciate your vote on November 6th, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lyda. Our next person in the closing order is Mr. Duell. And Mr. Dool, you may proceed with your closing.
Oh, thank you very much, and thanks once again to our host and to all those who chose to spend their evening here with us and at home. I'm proud of what the members of SOS Noblesville and I have accomplished this year. With the support of Sheriff Tim Troyer and Fox 59, we successfully campaigned for the discontinued use of the portable classrooms due to both safety and health concerns. We have also been petitioning since February for an independent threat assessment following the Parkland shooting, and I'm happy to report and very thankful to the administration for now following up on that. This is a good start, but we have so much more work left to do. We have the ideas, research, and the backing of national and state law experts, law enforcement experts. I'm especially proud of our ongoing relationship with Max Schachter, who I mentioned earlier, whose son had passed away at Parkland. He has really taken the torch that was lit in Noblesville, and a peculiar sort of flip-flop as Parkland happened first, but it's been an amazing relationship working with those in Parkland, especially Max Schachter, who has taken this torch lit here in Noblesville, using the Indiana best practices outlined in Public Law 27, leading to a national stage in Washington, D.C. As a member of the Noblesville School Board, I would continue such partnerships and work to see that Noblesville plays a leading role, an example for all to see, in helping to secure schools and safeguard the students, staff, and faculty of Noblesville schools. And I would sure appreciate your vote doing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dool. Mr. Durham, you are next on our list, and you may proceed with your closing.
I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. It's great to see this turnout. Too many times we hear people complaining but not getting out and getting educated. So I appreciate you guys coming out so that you can make an informed decision. Well, I would appreciate everyone's vote. That's not what I'm here to ask for. I mean, you're doing your duty to come out and be informed, and I hope that you vote for the two candidates that you feel are the best fit to serve your needs in the school district. Whether I win or not, I will continue to serve this community in every role possible to support the children and the teachers. So I hope that you come out and vote on November 6th, and most importantly, vote yes for the referendum.
Thank you, Mr. Durham. And Mr. Bill, or Dr. Bill, you are the last person by the draw, and so you may proceed with your closing.
Yes, and I'll start with reiterating the public school mission, which is to help students learn how to learn. And if we ever get away from that and get divested into all these other issues of safety and money for safety, we're going to be in a lot of trouble, because students need to learn how to learn. You know, I am committed to every single student of the 10,000 that are in this area. Best teachers, I'm for that. First best should be the best pay in the county. Best principals, welcome students at the door daily. Every kid that walks in that school. We ought to have the best schools and facilities. I think we've got that. Best education. What's that mean? Well, committed teachers, committed. And some of them can't handle it here for a lot of reasons and go somewhere else, so be it. That's life. And best security. Well, I want to tell you, we have a wonderful local enforcement system here. They can't do everything, I know that, but you must invest and understand the local law enforcement, because placing police in schools and social workers, I work with a lot of social workers, good people, but that's not the answer with 10,000 students in a community of 52,000, I'll tell you that.
Thank you, Dr. Bell. And thank you, each of you, as candidates. On behalf of everyone here, those who may be at home watching, I understand that there's two things here. One, the very act of going to the clerk's office and signing and saying, yes, I'm willing to undertake this responsibility on behalf of the children, the youth of this community. That's a significant step. And secondly, you also understand that you have to maybe be here, talk to people, and so not everyone's in the end prepared to do that. So I think everyone here needs to give you a round of applause. Thank you for your And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Bob, who will give us any further words of wisdom and then dismiss us. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I want to just echo Judge Barr's comments. We're so thankful that you're willing to step forward and put your name on the ballot and give us some great options there. And I loved your thoughtful answers. Thank you, Judge Barr, for handling the heavy lifting here tonight. And thank you all for attending. I'd like to ask Peg Harmon to come up from the League of Women Voters. There are several options for you to learn more about some of the other candidates for office.
The League of Women Voters of Hamilton County, we are having 5 candidate forums in the next 5 weeks or so. And we tried to group them by geographically. So the one in Noblesville on October 22nd, which will be here, starting at 7 p.m., is most likely going to be your district, but to be absolutely sure, you should go to indianavoters.com and put your address information in, and it will show you who your candidates are and what districts they're in. So if you have any questions about that. But we also have county offices going to be also here on, actually the next week, October 2nd is probably your state representative and senator. But November 22nd will be county offices. And we also have Susan Brooks and Dee Thornton November 1st at Shamrock Springs Elementary School in Westfield. But we do have copies of these out on the table out there, and also a small piece of paper that has indianavoters.com. It says on here indianavotersin.gov, but they both work. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The League does a wonderful service at letting us learn more about the candidates. I will let you know that we received a lot of questions, as Judge Barr mentioned, that were not asked tonight. We are going to provide all of those questions to you, and we'd encourage you to give some thought to your answers about that. And if you choose to make those public, we'll share them out. But there are lots of topics that we couldn't cover here this evening. So thank you all for attending. Thank you all for being here, and good luck on Election Day.